Welcome to Pure Hustle Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday minisode. Yeah. There's something different about that intro.
There is, because I was looking up like the transcripts of our episodes, like trying to see if I can add like timestamps. Okay. And every time, not every time, but a lot of times when I say Pure Hustle Podcast, it thinks I'm saying Pierce Podcast. And so I'm like, maybe I'm not articulating
interesting
when I'm saying Pure Hustle Podcast. So I'm gonna make sure to enunciate, to articulate that. And today we're doing a Monday Mini. Monday Minis are where we kind of give a short, kind of focused attention to one topic or one element of reselling. And then we also have our long form podcast on Wednesdays, where you can listen to an hour and 15 minutes or so of content, ranging from topics, ranging from reseller news and what's happening in the world of reselling, bolos, things that we're doing, just lots of great information. But today we're going to be talking about when you should be picking up an item. Like, is this an item that you should be buying to flip and resell, or is this a pass? So is this well, what's a phrase for it? Is this a buy or pass? Is this a yes or no? Do it.
Go or no go.
Go or no go. None of those things rhyme. I feel like we could have done a much better job of making that like catchy, but you get the drift.
Or maybe next time.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So what do we need to do to decide if this item is worth it?
So there's 5 things we came up with. Then the first one is profit margin, and that's easy. Easy. But is it within your profit margin? Right? There are some people that they're okay if they pick up 100 items and they're only going to make 1 or 2% on those 100 items. There's other people, generally like Mike and I, that like picking up items and 5xing our money on that item. Or instead of 5x, saying, hey, every item I pick up has to have at least $20 net profit. Yeah. Right. And you have to stick to that rule, I would say, pretty much most of the time, unless it's something you can flip quick. But I strongly urge you to stick to that rule, because if you don't, what ends up happening is you begin making exceptions here and exceptions there. And next thing you know it, you have no rule, right? You've broken it, and you end up having all these items that you regret picking up. And then you're like, oh, it's not worth my time. The margins aren't there. I'm just not going to list it. So you got to be careful.
That's great. And that kind of leads into the next part, like you even mentioned, is if it's something you can sell quickly, that can be a complete game changer. And you want to look and consider the sell-through rate when you're picking up an item. And we've talked a lot about the benefit of setting your phone eBay search to like locking it to sold items, because that's like the first indicator of whether or not you should pick up an item. Like, does this thing sell for money on eBay? So I see this thing, it's $10 here at the garage sale. Oh, look, it sells for $80 on eBay. Okay, that's like your first big green flag. Like, this is probably a go. But you also want to consider sell-through rate, which then could take a little bit of extra step of, okay, how many of these things have sold? If there's one green sold price thing, that might not be a great sign. So you got to see how many are listed. Well, if there was no others listed, hey, you're good to go. This thing's probably got a pretty good sell-through rate. The only one that was listed sold. But if there's only one that's sold and there's 30, 40, 50 of them listed, this might be a pass, even though you have a good example of, hey, I could buy this thing for $10. It sells for 70 or $80, but there's a whole bunch listed and only one has sold. Okay. Now that clear, I should get this, has dropped significantly, because you want your items to move. You want to be able to get things to go quickly, because if you're buying items and you're storing them, then that's all you're doing is buying items and storing them. You've got to sell them. And the sell-through rate is a good indicator of, are you going to be able to sell this in the next 30, 60, 90 days? And it's fine to long tail some items, but if you're long tailing all of your items, you're probably not going to be very successful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best items I picked up recently was a board game, believe it or not.
Love them on board games.
And there was 8 listed and 36 sold.
That's good.
So I'm like, all right, this is going to sell quick. Sure enough, sold in 24 hours. Right. And so definitely want to keep an eye, you want to compare the solds to the unsolds. All right. Then this one, not a lot of people discuss this, but are you going to list it? Like, are you seriously going to take that home? Are you going to clean it up? Are you going to take the pictures? Are you going to get, on your phone, or are you going to get on, your desktop, and are you going to actually list it? And I know that sounds very basic, but right now in the studio, I actually have a lot of things that I have not listed that I probably should not have picked up. Right. And some items I'm just lazy and I don't care. Like I have right now in the studio, I'll be real with you. I have an inflatable Halloween biker on a motorcycle. That
cool.
It
Don't
is
lie,
cool.
You just want to keep it.
It's cool. And I paid $10 for it, and I'll probably sell it for close to 100 or so. But I have to go out and I have to inflate it and I have to put the stakes in and I have to take the pictures and I have to show a video of it working. And I kind of don't want to do all that.
Yeah, I think and sometimes in a situation like that, it's just better just to inflate it in your living room and just let it go. Just leave it there. It's cool.
Or just leave it there because I don't force you to list it because you want to get like you can't remove it until you list it.
That's right. But yeah, there's a lot of things like whether it's VCRs or I love
have
selling
a couple VCRs.
Yep, I love selling board games, but there's some board games that I have that I haven't even started counting pieces in them yet because is there a lot of money? Yes, but it's going to take a lot of time for me to do it. And I'm probably never going to end up listing this one. So you got to consider that when you're picking up the items. And then another thing you're going to consider whether or not it's worth it is the shipping. There are times where you get an item and it's very profitable, but if it's going to take you hours to ship, and not every item is like this. A lot of items are very quick. It's just throw it in a bag, throw it in a box, maybe some bubble wrap, a couple of pieces of paper, something like that. Maybe you need to float it. But if you've got a awkwardly sized item or you've got a very
80 pounds,
very heavy item, then you're going into a different ballpark of, do you have the right stuff for this? Do you already have boxes that are going to fit this? Or are you going to have to Frankenbox something? Do you have all the supplies you're going to need? I mean, there have been things where I've had to like go to the store and get styrofoam, like pieces of like insulation, thick styrofoam insulation for like walls, and then cut that up and use that as like a box within a box and like cut shapes that it would cover parts. Because when you got very breakable big things, and then by the time it's all said and done, it's like, man, I spent an hour packing this thing. And yeah, I'm going to net $100. But then once you consider all of the steps it took, including the shipping, the actual hourly wage goes way down. And so even if it's easy to list, even if it's something you're excited to list because it's going to be profitable, if shipping is going to be a nightmare, consider passing on it. I mean, there's been a lot of profitable things that I say, yeah, that's pretty cool, too heavy. And then I keep walking because maybe I make $100 on it, but it's just not going to be worth the amount of time and energy it's going to take to make that $100.
And then there's also other thing to consider about shipping is it going to be worth dealing with the return? Mm-hmm. Right. So for example, the nightmare I had early last year was I sold a heater for $200, but it cost me $100 to ship. And it just didn't work when the person got it.
Yeah.
So even if they paid return shipping, right, it's still a pain because then it's going to come back and then I got to deal with inspecting it and then I got to refund them the $200. Plus I'm already out. I also have to refund them their shipping. Yep. Right. So that's $300, and so is it worth, the risk involved?
Yep, that's a big one.
I have some big items right now that I'm kind of worried about. So we'll see what happens. All right. And then the last one, is it worth the time that you're spending? Right. If something is taking you, from start to finish, from sourcing to listing to shipping, and you're only making a couple bucks, probably not worth your time. Right. Unless you can do all that in 30 seconds, $2, that's $4 an hour. That's $240 an hour if you do the math. Then maybe. But if something's taking you, let's say 30 minutes, right? And you're only making, 10 or 20 bucks. It might be worth it. All depends on where you're at in life and the amount of money you're okay making. But you got to determine, is the time worth it to you? Right. And most eBay sellers, as they sell for longer, their rate goes up. Right. In the beginning, you might be like, hey, I'm okay making $8 an hour, $10 an hour because it's not that hard of work. Then you get to the $20 and then the $30. And there are some people that will say, hey, unless I can make over $100 an hour in reselling, like I'm not going to pick up certain items. So you got to figure if the time is worth it to you.
That's good.
So that is our 5 things on decide if it's worth it. If there's anything else you can think about, put it down below. Always love to learn from the community because we're all learning together. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.